There are around 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. The adherents of Islam believe in brotherhood, peace, and harmony, and they also believe in coexistence. And they have deep emotional and sentimental connection to the sanctity of the religious books as well as religious personalities. But it seems there has been a clear and deliberate attempt to hurt these sentiments through various Islamophobic actions and incidents, particularly when we talk about the rise of Islamophobia in the Western countries. Now, some days ago, a very unfortunate and a regrettable incident happened. A far-right Swedish politician attempted to burn and desecrate a copy of Holy Quran. And this insulting act was condemned strongly by the entire Muslim world. Now, this particular incident is not in isolation. After there was a strong reaction by the entire Muslim world on this insulting act, there was a similar sort of an incident that was reported from the Netherlands and other European country. Now, there is a history when it comes to such type of insulting and provocative acts from various European countries. Now, when we talk regarding that particular incident which happened in Stockholm, Sweden, there was a tweet by a Swedish Prime Minister. Let me quote that particular tweet. "Freedom of expression is a fundamental part of democracy, but what is legal is not necessarily appropriate. Burning books that are holy to many is a deeply disrespectful act." And the Prime Minister went on to say that I want to express my sympathy for all Muslims who are offended by what has happened in Stockholm. As I have already mentioned, there had been a strong reaction from the entire Muslim world. The OIC has also urged the Swedish authorities to take some measures to bring the perpetrators to book and hold them accountable. Similarly, the UN Alliance on Alliance of Civilizations has also condemned this particular thing. Now, there has been a very strong reaction from Turkey when we talk about its support to Sweden's bid to NATO's membership. It has postponed the talks, another round of talks with Sweden indefinitely on this particular incident. Earlier, we saw another important incident that happened. A female student from Turkey was denied acceptance by a Swedish university professor. The professor said, since Turkey won't allow Sweden to join NATO, I have to decline. Sorry. So we'll be talking about there had been a lot of strides on part of the Muslim authorities around the world when it comes to the rise in Islamophobia across the globe. And we also saw the UN also declared 15th of March as an international day to combat Islamophobia. Now, what happens to be the responsibility of international community in this particular regard? Let me bring in our panelists. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Aslam Khaki. He is a religious scholar. Dr. Khaki, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. At the same time, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Naveed Aman Khan. He's expert foreign affairs. He's author of 6 books, the 2 worth mentioning books that include September the 11th, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and America, and Role of American Media post 9/11. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on Views on News tonight. At the same time, we are being joined on the phone line from Turkey, Mr. Hasan Abdullah, diplomatic correspondent, TRT World. Mr. Hasan Abdullah, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News. And we are also being joined by Dr. Jamil Khan, his former ambassador. Dr. Jamil Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Hasan Abdullah. Now, when we talk about this insulting act by the far-right politician in Sweden, he attempted to desecrate the holy book in front of the Turkey's embassy. Why is that so? What sort of a motive do you think was associated with this particular specific act, which was carried out specifically in front of Turkey's embassy?
Well, I think there are quite a few reasons we can look at. So first of all, of course, this was a protest from his part against Turkey because remember that many in the West are looking at Turkey as an obstacle to Sweden and Finland joining NATO. If you look online on the social media, you'll see many people protesting against Turkey, saying that Turkey is blocking it. That's one motive. That's quite clearly stated. Then, of course, there are other domestic political reasons as well. So I think one of the most convenient ways to gain attention, to gain publicity, is to attack Islam or Muslims. This is a practice that often goes without any check. There's hardly any condemnation or action, any sort of action that's going to stop this practice. So we find many parties on the fringe of European politics, they often tend to resort to this tactic. They target Muslims, and it's often argued that this cannot be a case of racism because Muslims are not a race. They have various identities. So I think the domestic politics factor is very strong, especially if you look at this character in question. He's actually Danish. He's not even from Sweden.
Right. When we talk about the tweet that was from the Swedish Prime Minister, there are various parts of it. If we try to dissect this particular tweet, the first part of it is freedom of expression is a fundamental part of democracy. Now, we've seen many Muslim countries that under the garb or on the pretext of freedom of expression or opinion, such type of provocation or insult is not justified at all, and the sentiments and the emotions of around 1.5 billion Muslims are hurt. Now, when we specifically talk about this particular tweet, freedom of expression is a fundamental part of democracy. At the same time, in the same breath, he says, but what is legal is not necessarily appropriate. Burning books that are holy to many is the deeply respectful act. Do you think this is sufficient?
Well, Jawad, I think we have to be very clear about a few things. Muslims often have a tendency to take a sort of a reactionary, apologetic approach to this. We have to acknowledge that there is a clash of value systems. We often find Muslims taking the sort of freedom of speech, freedom of expression argument when it comes to anyone targeting Islam or the Prophet ﷺ or Quran. That's actually, a faulty approach. Basically, what you're doing is you're accepting the Western paradigm and you're trying to argue your case from within that, and you end up losing. So I think we have to take a more fundamental philosophical approach. We have to understand how there are conflicting value structures in place and go from there. This whole discourse on Islamophobia itself is problematic. Basically, what we're saying is that these are Islamophobic actions. Phobia is irrational fear of something. And we're making the assumption that it's something that's just started or it's just on the rise at the moment. There's actually a historical context we're ignoring. So, for example, the very European identity was constructed during the medieval period, and the common factor they found was their opposition to Islam and to the Muslim forces at the time. So I think these historical factors, we have to take them into account, and we have to bring them into our discourse and go beyond this sort of superficial Islamophobia, counter-Islamophobia narrative that we seem to find so common in the Muslim world.
So what possible measures do you suggest in this regard could be on efficient lines?
Well, I think first of all, it's awareness, it's education. We have to understand the nature of problem ourselves as Muslims. We take a very reactionary approach to this. So, we start talking about Islamophobia, the rise in Islamophobia. We talk about Western populism. Yes, these are symptoms of a bigger problem.
So what's exactly at the root? What's exactly, Mr. Hasan Abdullah, beg your pardon for the interruption. What's at the root? When you've got your emotional and sentimental connection towards your holy personalities and holy books, naturally, if somebody is trying to hurt those sentiments by such type of provocative actions, of course, it's going to enrage the people who are emotionally connected. Because if we talk about Muslim community in particular, it won't go on to desecrate any sort of holy scriptures of any other religion or try to insult or give provocative remarks regarding the personality of any other religion. That's what Muslims don't do. They believe in peaceful coexistence. So Muslims demand that, look, this is the red line, and we don't want to hear anything regarding provocative, regarding our holy personalities and holy scriptures. So I think it's very much justified, and the United Nations has the mandate also. And when it comes to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it's very clearly mentioned in that one as well. So there shouldn't be any sort of...
I think, Jawad Sahab, I think it would help if we actually try and understand what's being said. This is precisely the problem. We rush into building a counter-narrative without actually understanding the historical context and the gravity of the situation. So when you're making references to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you're actually weakening your case. Because there are many things in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that go against your value systems. So, for example, when Sweden says that it's going, and when you hear the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, saying that we can understand that some things can be inappropriate but not necessarily illegal, to quote him, Jens Stoltenberg, this is precisely the point. This is not against the Western value system to carry out such attacks. You know, Muslims often jump and say, well, hold on a second. Why is it that if there was any criticism of Judaism, that would be construed as anti-Semitism or racism? Again, a very sort of knee-jerk reaction without understanding the context. So, you know, when we're making references...
Right, Mr. Abdullah, your point is well taken. Now, when we talk about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, now there's been a condemnation by the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. Also, the High Representative spokesperson has said that it is disrespectful and insulting to the adherents of Islam and should not be conflated with freedom of expression. So how do we make sense of this thing?
Well, this is precisely where you seem to be missing the point. You know, you need to initiate a more fundamental philosophical discourse on these very constructs, Western constructs of freedom of speech and expression. What we tend to do as reactionary Muslims is we tend to take these narratives for granted, and we try to argue our case by taking them as the framework. This is the problem. I'm speaking here not as a diplomatic correspondent, I'm speaking here in my academic capacity at the moment. So, you know, this is the problem. We're talking about alliance of civilizations, we're talking about condemnations and so forth, but ultimately, if you follow the discussions in the academia, especially in the Western circles, they're talking about the need to defend their value structures. Now, of course, as Muslims, we oppose any value structure that legitimizes or allows the insulting of any religion or holy books or God for that matter. But this is the problem. We're trying to resort to their framework, which actually allows that. It's part of their value structures to allow this. This is what the NATO Secretary General has said, and this is precisely what the Swedish Prime Minister seems to be saying.
So when we talk about another incident that happened to a female student from Turkey, she was denied the internship, and her application of internship was rejected by a Swedish professor, saying, since your country won't allow Sweden to become the part of NATO, I won't accept it. Sorry. So that particular thing, the response given by the professor in the Swedish university to Turkey, a student, is that in line with the values of the Western world that you are mentioning in your take?
Well, there are isolated cases, and there's a philosophical discourse that's happening in the Western academic and philosophical circles. They're two separate things. So, for example, as far as the Swedish professor is concerned, we've had the university saying that this was an inappropriate act, this was unacceptable. The Swedish authorities or the university have not defended it. This is very different from the actual debates taking place in Western academia. The problem is, unfortunately, we're not following them. So, you know, we tend to blindly trail the dominant ideology, the dominant narratives, and we try to argue our case according to them. And this is why you end up losing. So, if you continue on this path for the next 100 years with condemnations and so forth, this is just going to continue.
So what specifically, one last point I want your take on this particular things. Now, Turkey has a decision of postponing those talks with Sweden indefinitely. Now, the Turkish president warned Sweden that he would not support its bid to join the Western US-led defense alliance after the burning of Holy Quran by a Swedish far-right leader during the weekend. What about that?
Well, there is strong sentiment as far as a large chunk of the Turkish public is concerned. They're angry at this. But as far as the foreign policies of Muslim countries are concerned, they're rooted in pragmatism. So it's just a matter of time for the dust to settle, and then the process is going to resume.
Your point is well taken. Mr. Hasan Abdullah, diplomatic correspondent from TRT World, joining us on the phone line. We really appreciate for your time, for being with us on Views on News. Now, Dr. Aslam Khaki, what motive do you think of these provocative acts happen to be? And most of the time they're happening in various European countries. When we talk about the recent incident that happened in Stockholm in Sweden, and after there was a strong reaction from the Muslim world, there was another similar sort of incident that took place in the Netherlands also.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. There are various, you can say, different motives with the people who are just doing all this. Sometimes it is religious, but more than it is regional. They have some other ulterior motives to just defame or to just lay down some country. Like in Indo-Pak relationship, we can see that some things are taken as an Islamophobia to take the Muslims down or to take the country down. As far as Islamophobia is concerned, it's a very simple concept. Last year there were also debates in the media, and that happened in Holland. There was, but came to the Canadian, even Prime Minister, the event were there. He strongly condemned the concept of Islamophobia and said that the religion Islam does not believe in desecrating of any holy personage or any faith. But in this time, we see that the Swedish Prime Minister did not condemn it strongly. He had a soft, you can say, a statement, and not condemning means appreciating, I would say. As Bush said at that time after 9/11, who is not with us is against us. So the person who is not condemning strongly this event of burning Quran means that he is appreciating it indirectly. As far as freedom of expression is concerned, it is of 3 steps. It is number 1 is the freedom from religion, yes. Freedom of religion, it means that everybody is allowed to have any religion in the world, in his country, and that is there even in Pakistan, even in Europe. The second is freedom from religion. It is also allowed. You can have no religion. You can declare, I don't believe in any religion. But the third perspective which has come in the past 2 decades is, in the name of freedom of expression, we go freedom against religion. That's the point which should be combated against. So you can't criticize the other faiths, or you can't criticize. As far as Quran is concerned, we have the honor of being the faith follower of the lost prophet and of the lost book. And this lost book speaks about the holy persons and the miracles of the other prophets, even the Holy Christ. He gives the sacred, noble defense of the birth of the Holy Christ from the Virgin Holy Mary. No other book is there. And so it is not the book of Muslim, it is the book of Christians, it is the book of Judaism or Jews, because it talks much in favor of and appreciating the efforts of the holy Moses. So how can we say that this book is of Muslim? We say no, this book is not of Muhammad. This is the book of all the prophets. That's why we say stories of Quran, Qasasul Quran, much have been just mentioned in this book. So when they are burning or desecrating this book, they are desecrating their own prophets' values and their teachings as well. And we have
Dr. Khaki, your point, you have made your point. Let's proceed with the discussion. Mr. Khan, now when it comes to the response from the Swedish Prime Minister, as Dr. Khaki also said, that it is not sufficient, it is not strongly condemned by the Prime Minister. Does it mean that because that particular attempt was also given approval by the concerned police also? So this kind of clarification coming from the Swedish Prime Minister, is it sufficient, or there should be a concrete action regarding the perpetrators of these provocative incidents?
Number 1, Tehami, we condemn this vile act of desecration of the Holy Quran in front of the Turkish embassy in Stockholm, Sweden. This is insufficient. the response by the Swedish Prime Minister is insufficient. What he should have done, he will have to, and he should have to taken firm measures against the perpetrators of this hate crime. This is an attempt of spreading hatred among the cool and calm community of the Muslims living in the Western world. Muslims are living very peacefully in the Western world, and you have never heard any such act or any such incident done by or committed by the Muslims against any religion or any belief. Even then, if we don't talk about the religion or the belief, even the Muslims, they honor or respect the beliefs or the words of the atheists who don't believe in any religion. We respect such people as well, and it is the preaching and the teachings of the Holy Quran.
So what do you think lies at the very root that prompts people in the Western countries to do such type of acts? We've seen the publishing of the blasphemous caricatures and back-to-back such type of incidents of desecration of the Holy Quran also. Does it have to do anything with the associated with 9/11 and the kind of Western media's propaganda in that regard?
We can say 9/11 was in fact one of the reasons of this hatredness in the Western world, in America, and I don't think that West and America has learned any lesson from that incident or that sort of hatred or polarization. Polarization is increased manifold. And this is the Western world who has increased. It's not the Muslims living in the Western world. They are living very peacefully. They have never touched any sentiment of any religion or any belief in the West. Like, you know, previously in Denmark, Sweden, in France, in many other places of the world, it has happened. But none of the Muslims have done like this in Western world.
Right, Muslims naturally take care of the belief
Take
system
the incident of the New Zealand, you know.
the adherents of other religions also.
2 or 3 years back, an Australian attacked the Muslims in the mosque.
That's why the UN declared the 15th of March in that connection as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. Now, we are joined by Dr. Jamil Khan, former ambassador, also in the program. Dr. Jamil Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, when we talk about these back-to-back incidents to hurt the Muslim sentiment across the world, there had been a strong condemnation, and previously we saw the United Nations also took a huge stride in this regard to declare 15th of March as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. What do you think lies at the very root of this particular phenomenon that is on the rise when you talk particularly of the Western countries? Is it directly connected solely to the impact of 9/11, or there are other historical roots to it as well?
Well, there is some combination of factors. It's not only one factor. 9/11 is one. And 9/11, once it happened, and the way all those propaganda started happening, it started giving the impression to a common man in the Western society or non-Muslim society that perhaps it is perpetrated by the Islamic ideology. And that is where the Muslim world could not counter that propaganda at that time. There was an attempt that Muslim world should join their heads and hand together and try and launch a counter, say, a campaign against that. That was one. The second aspect is the right-wing politics have started thriving on this idea of creating hatred against the Muslims. That has now almost become a fashion in that society, particularly those people who want to really have power through the right-wing propaganda and the right-wing approach of the politics. The third one is you can see the kind of statement which the PM has given, PM Sweden has given, and you have already in your intro has mentioned about it. It says, but what is legal is not necessarily appropriate. So he can go up to that extent only. The fact of the matter is that if we go deep into the legal framework of the world, what to talk of the country's legal frame, I don't think in Sweden they can allow people who create an environment where the violence can take place, or the hate speech which could lead to a violence. They would not allow in their own society. So how they could tolerate hate and speech or the campaign of hatred inciting people to the violence. So that should attract the law of the land. But if we talk about the international law, Article 7 of the Universal Declaration is very clear. It gives clear indication about there shouldn't be any discrimination against any faith or religion. Article 18 of the Universal Declaration again is very clear and candid that practice of religion and belief should not be circumvented through any means. So that is what the spirit of the Article 18 is. Now, leaving that aside, what we are doing, there are about 10 Muslim countries, maybe 2 more have given the statements. They have only condemned. Turkey has really called it as an attack, right? But all other countries have condemned only, and disgraceful act, condemned, incitement, Qatar says incitement, and serious provocation. UAE again condemns and contravention of human rights and moral values. Oman and Kuwaitis, Egyptian says it's disgraceful act. The fact of the matter is there are 57 countries blocked of the OIC, and they have their charter. Have they been able to invoke that charter or not? My question to the entire Muslim world is, and OIC member states, that their own charter, it says that an extraordinary summit could be called under Article 6 of the OIC charter, and extraordinary charters are the summit is called by and that comprises of the head of the state and the kings and the head of the government, and it is done only in cases once they feel that the interest and the sentiments of Muslims are being impacted and affected. So in this case, they have not been able to do that. Secretary General has condemned it, fine, it should be appreciated, but the legal provision has not been invoked. And it says whenever the interest of the Ummah warranted to consider matter of vital importance. What could be a matter of vital importance than the sentiments and religious feelings of the 1.5 billion Muslims, the way they are now having the pain in their heart. So the extraordinary summit could not be called. And if that was not called, again there is a provision. They could have called the Council of Ministers extraordinary meeting. They did not do that. And in their own preamble, they have mentioned about protecting the interests of the Muslims. Nothing has been done. If they could only pass a resolution through these two mechanisms, what I just indicated, that they are going to boycott of all the products of Sweden, I tell you, they would have apologized. They would have taken this person on task who has done all this desecration. So I think we are also to be blamed. Prodden could not have had the courage. He did it the same thing last year, and he went to various cities and desecrated Holy Quran, but he was scot-free last year, and Muslim world did not really invoke any of these provisions. What to talk of that? This forum, like this OIC, it has the strength of Chapter 8 of United Nations Charter. And under that Chapter 8, these regional forums such as OIC can take actions as a bloc. They have not done it. Okay. fine
Right,
enough,
right.
they could have-
Dr. Jamil Khan, I'll have to interrupt you over here. Please stay with us. I'll have to proceed with the discussion. Dr. Khaki, now, a lot of things have been mentioned by Dr. Jamil Khan. We'll be talking about those one by one. Now, when we talk about such type of incidents happening towards the Muslims, so what happens to the responsibility of the Muslims? What does Islam say in this particular regard?
As far as Muslim conduct is expected in these days, is that there are several lines in favor of the Muslims as well, because many leaders, even non-Muslim leaders, have condemned such events, including the heads of the state. After 9/11, I was also there in America as Fulbright professor, just having a lecture there. I was confronted with some Muslim conduct, but at that time, even you can see that Secretary General of UN, he came up to the rescue or against the Islamophobia. He said that as crusades cannot be quoted as the teaching of the Christianity, so such events of 9/11, they are just waged by some group. Incidentally or accidentally, they are Muslims, but Islam does not teach them. So he just made it in the positive way. But then came the Huntington with the book Clash of Civilization. That was just made popular, though it was written in the form of article before 9/11, but after that, because Mr. Bush referred it in his speech, that became the popular. And there was the real, he just depicted the phobia not only against the Muslim, but against the China and Asian belt. So that came the East versus West, or East versus Rest, West versus Rest. There were slogans. So in this, we need to educate the people, to educate our conduct as well, that we should condemn the people who are terrorists. And I say that I said in my speech there in US, I said we are doubly victim of this terrorism. Internally, we are the victim of terrorism. We are fighting against terrorism, against our so-called Muslim terrorists. And on the other hand, we are being blamed for the terrorism even from outside and from our neighbor countries and from the other thing. So we have to educate them similarly. And you can see our conduct, that 295 CPPC, in which there was disrespect, a death sentence for the disrespect to the Holy Prophet, we included, the Federal Shariat Court included the as death sentence penalty for all the prophets. Even for if somebody, even Muslim or non-Muslim, he just shows disrespect to the Holy Christ, he would also be given the death penalty. So we are just open enough, and we accept the thing because we believe in all the religions, we believe in all the prophets.
So, right, Dr. Khaki, now Mr. Abdullah was mentioning that these sort of incidents happen. There happens to be a reactionary approach from the Muslim world at large. Now, what's your take when such type of incidents repeatedly keep on happening, how the Muslim world should respond to that?
I think that the best forum is the OIC, number 2 at our state level, which we are doing, and number 3, the organizations which are working, Muslim organizations, they should come just in collaboration with the non-Muslim
what needs to be done
civil
from
society.
the platform of OIC, as Dr. Jamil Khan has also said, nothing concrete in that regard has been done. There has been condemnation by the OIC Secretary General in this regard also. So what do you think, what ideal lines the OIC should follow in this particular regard?
No, as, that my learned fellow has said that OIC is no more that OIC it was 2 decades before. They have their commercial
so what is
conflict
required to revive or bring it to that very level for which it was built and mandated?
OIC may not come back to the old field because they are commercial, political conflicts of the Muslim countries, as we see that their attitude towards Kashmir and all that, Palestine. But the best way is, because I have been living there in that society as a scholar, I was invited by the churches there, that the best is that the Muslim society is there. They should work with the non-Muslim civil societies there. There are a lot of the people are there. They are respectful to their faiths. They can come together. Muslim, as there are Abrahamic group, there are many groups which are Muslim, a Christian group. They should raise the voice against these terrorists because the terrorist is terrorist. It has no religion. It has only region, but no religion, as I say. So we should work together with, at interfaith level, as we say. So we should just motivate our foreign friends who are living there, Muslim. They should work with the non-Muslim civil people, civil society, as we should also work there, because I have the opportunity of some interaction with the Christians here, and they are very much helpful and they are very much respectful. So we should work with them and should condemn. Not only the Muslim, but all the civil society should condemn such non-civil or uncivil attitude towards religions. So religion should come forward. All the religion fellows, faith followers should come forward. Number two is that we should also condemn any act which is a terrorist act against the other countries. We should just stop there as 9/11. It should be condemned, though
So,
it was done
don't
by
you
the
think it
law.
was condemned by the Muslim population at large across
This is
the
our
whole
positive
globe
attitude.
and the Muslim leaders also?
Yeah. So this is the attitude we expect from the other societies, non-Muslim states as well, that when there is such type of disrespect to our book or to our holy prophet, they should come strongly and should punish. Not only the condemnation,
Right.
until because they are not punished, so they come
Mr.
with
Khan,
that
you have
again
to
and
add
again
something to it,
repeated.
please.
Fawad, in fact, if I add some words to Khaki Sahab, it's not only the matter of OIC. It's a matter of UN, European Union, African Union, Arab League. All the forums need to come ahead and address this issue. This is a universal, this is an international issue. This will swallow the peace and harmony of the world. And all the forums need to come ahead, take firm measures, and put such culprits,
we have seen a manifestation, the loss of life in New Zealand also after that.
Absolutely.
White supremacist attacks. So there is a far-right extremism over there, also in the Western countries also.
We Muslims are not the extremists, in fact. What happened in New Zealand? More than 50 Muslims, they lost their lives in an attack in the mosque. But the role played by the former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, was wonderful. She came out in a mourning attire, she met with the families affected in that massacre, and she extended her cooperation, harmony, and love for the Muslims. This behavior should have been done or should have been extended from the different head of the states or
that
of the
clearly
countries.
shows there
in
was
this case as
a
well.
deeper understanding of the human sentiment, whether you belong to whichever religion or whichever ideology do you belong to. There was an understanding, deeper understanding of that very damage and that pain that was accrued towards Muslims after that horrific attack in New Zealand. So why is such type of understanding can't be seen in the leaders of the other Western countries when we talk about the European countries
Sure.
in particular?
This is what I'm saying, that if European Union, if UN and the other forums, the head of the states and the head of the governments of different countries, unless they come out, they come ahead and condemn such acts, this will not be addressed.
So no. Don't you think not only condemnation, because New Zealand took concrete measures when it comes to their laws regarding the heavy weapons also. So there were certain concrete measures taken in that country. Now, do you think only condemnation is going to suffice with such a burning issue that the world is faced with? Shouldn't be a concrete action when it comes to the Western countries?
When we talk about the condemnation, it means the first step is condemnation. When you say this is wrong, then you take some firm measures. What the first world, the Western world, needs to do is to come ahead and make some laws to force such presidents or the prime ministers, even who are backing such culprits. The act or the response of the Swedish prime minister is disgusting. I mean, this is just to, I think it shows that he is provoking or he is just encouraging the culprits to do and go for another act. I mean, this is And this is condemnable. This should not be done like this.
Dr. Jamil Khan, what's your take regarding this? We saw a horrific incident happening in New Zealand, and the kind of concrete measures which were taken by the authorities, particularly when we talk about the former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, not a very similar sort of behavior or a response is seen from the leaders of the Western countries, particularly which are in Europe. So what's the difference between in the approach of the countries which are in Europe and the kind of response that was given by New Zealand's Prime Minister at that time?
Oh, of course, that has been applauded and appreciated everywhere, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, former Prime Minister of New Zealand's action. But the person who perpetrated that, the attack on the mosque and caused the casualties and made so many Muslim shaheed, was an Australian guy, number one. Number two, the society, New Zealand society, they do not really use the hate speech and the right-wing mindset to propel their politics. Now in the West, the problem has started that they have started bringing the hate speeches and bringing hatred against the Muslims as a tool to gain popularity among their own voters and supporters. So that's one aspect. What could have been the countermeasure? The countermeasure was, if last year, once the same Plowden was convicted for the racist abuse and provoked rioting in Sweden, that should have, once he was being given permit to carry out the protest this time, where he again desecrated the Holy Quran, the Muslim world should have opened their eyes. And at that time, they would have quoted last year's incident. They would have quoted all these international laws, what we are discussing here. They would have pressurized that the OIC bloc or the bilateral sanction could be imposed on Sweden. They could have quoted that, like Turkish is very clear. Turkey is very clear, Turkey, that they are not going to really support them to become a member of the NATO. At least they have taken some stand and they have said they have attacked it. Now, none of the other Muslim country has, of course, Pakistan.
So Dr. Jamil Khan, very quickly, please, we're unfortunately short of time. Do you think after this reaction from Turkey, there would be heat felt among the ranks at Tehami in Sweden?
That has to be really invoked by through various mechanisms, through the public diplomacy, through the legal diplomacy, and at the level of head of states. If
when we especially talk about Sweden's desperation to get its membership in NATO, and for it requires the ratification of Turkey also.
They will definitely feel the heat of it, but they would have even felt the heat of it, and they would have punished this guy if we had boycotted of certain products of Sweden. And that could have been done very easily, because if not from the OIC platform, at least at the bilateral level, countries could have started doing it. Like the Turkey, they summoned their ambassador and they demarched the ambassador also. The next step, they could take it in that direction. So the other countries have to follow the suit. Not only that, but the other countries now, as it is given in their charter, have to develop a framework where they could address such actions against the Muslim Ummah and against the interest of the Muslim Ummah. That's within their charter, within the preamble of the charter. So that has to be reactivated. We don't have a stronger forum than OIC. At bilateral level, they could not be as strong as at the multilateral level. Yes.
Dr. Jamil Khan, former ambassador, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We were joined in the studio by Dr. Aslam, Khaki, religious scholar, and Mr. Naveed Aman Khan, expert foreign affairs. Thank you very much for your time, both of you gentlemen, for being on the show tonight. Now, when we talk about Islamophobia, it is rampant when we talk about the European countries. The United Nations took a huge stride by declaring 15th of March, that very day, a white supremacist in New Zealand killed the worshippers in mosque. The response by the New Zealand's administration, particularly the Prime Minister at that time, was phenomenal. we see a dearth of such type of response and reaction from the leaders of the European countries. Something concrete needs to be done in this regard, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which clearly says that everyone has the right to follow and practice their religion, and their religious sentiments and emotions should not be hurt by such type of provocative actions, incidents and insults. Something concrete on the part of the United Nations must also be done when it comes to the rise of Islamophobia in the Western countries, so that such type of provocative incidents that hurt the sentiments of 1.5 billion Muslims across the world don't recur. With that note, we come to the end of today's Views on News. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.